to CEC Gurukul lecture. In continuation with the series on sociological research method, in today's lecture we are going to discuss on ethical issues in data collection and analysis. So, we began with trying to understand that how social science researches kind of depend or grade on the measures that we adopt in maintaining the standards. That is, we kind of are doing research not only to benefit the researcher, but it should also be kind of more in terms of giving benefit to the respondent and the community. And in this regard, it's important that ethical standards are maintained right from the proposal writing to discussing the nature of research, a problem that is going to be taken up for research in the process of data collection and analysis. So, in this part of the lecture, we are going to talk about the ethical issues in terms of data analysis and interpretation. So, ethical issues in data analysis and interpretation demand careful attention to protecting participants' anonymity and responsibly managing research data. Researcher must adopt strategies that ensure individual roles and events described in the study remain confidential throughout and after the analysis. It is not that once the research is published, the researcher has the right to kind of openly disclose the identity of the respondent. It has to be kind of maintained, confidentiality has to be maintained even after the publication of the research. In quantitative studies like surveys, anonymity is maintained by disassociating participants' name from the responses during coding and data entry, reducing the risk of the identification. Because survey is on a large scale, the numbers are big. So, it cannot be possible to go in by each and every individual's identity, and therefore, certain variables are coded and then decoded. So, anonymity is automatically maintained in quantitative research. In qualitative research, pseudonyms or aliases are used for participants, that is, false names are used, and even the locations are kind of many a time not necessarily the true location. And these two are being done in order to safeguard identity while preserving the richness of the data. Researchers should retain analyzed data for a reasonable period, generally recommended as to 5 to 10 years, to allow for verification, replication, or further analysis while balancing privacy concerns. After this retention period, securely discarding data helps prevent unauthorized access or misuse, aligning with good ethical practice and data protection standards. So, the responsibility of the researcher is also after the publication of the research report, that the data is kind of maintained for 5 to 10 years, and then it is discarded in order so that nobody, the third person or someone else does not have access to it and it is misutilized. So, good ethical data handling in analysis and interpretation upholds the commitment to participants' privacy, promotes scientific integrity, and respects legal and institutional stipulations on data governance. Ownership of research data is a significant ethical issue that can cause conflicts within research team or between researchers and participants. Addressing data ownership clearly in research proposals help prevent disputes and establishes shared expectations among all parties involved, including faculty advisors and were relevant. Personal or formal agreements are recommended to explicitly designate who owns the data collected, who can access it, and under what conditions. So, even if there is a team of researcher, you always has the principal investigator, or different terms could be used, who becomes then the sole owner of that data. And it is also kind of since it's confidential data, there has to be a limit in terms of the people who can have access to it, and it is generally the members who are part of that research project. And there is a signed agreement that no data would be kind of released with and confidentially has to be maintained by every team member. Such agreement guard against unauthorized sharing or use of data by individual outside the research project, protecting participants' right and project integrity. A researcher must strive to present an accurate, honest account of their findings, avoiding misrepresentation or selective reporting. So, what is how kind of we ensure the accuracy in data interpretation? In quantitative research, debriefing with participants can validate the accuracy and interpretation of data, reinforcing transparency. Qualitative studies often use participants' validation strategies, member checks, or triangulation across different data sources to ensure finding accurately reflects participants' realities. So, it could be that the same questions are asked to kind of different sets of people, and it could be again kind of triangulating those questions to figure out how authentic the data revealed are. By proactively addressing data ownership and using robust strategy to verify interpretation, researchers uphold ethical standards that foster trustworthiness and collaboration in the research project. Ethical issues in writing and disseminating research extend beyond data collection and analysis to how findings are reported and shared with audience. Researcher must carefully consider language use, accuracy, and respect for participants throughout this phase. Researcher also needs to kind of maintain ethical guidelines and standard in writing and disseminating the research. That is, in the process of writing the findings of the research. So, you are doing it in the data collection, you are doing in the data analysis, and at the time of writing and disseminating the findings of the research. So, researchers should avoid biased or discriminatory language related to gender, sexual orientation, race, ethnicity, disability, or age. The APA Publication Manual 2001 recommends using specific and sensitive term, example naming particular ethnic groups rather than generalized label using participants, rather than subject and avoiding unnecessary qualifiers like woman doctor when doctor suffices. Reports must provide an honest and accurate account of the data and finding without fabrication, falsification, or selective reporting to favor hypothesis. So you cannot kind of fabricate data in order to prove your hypothesis as true or false. So you need to have an unbiased and respectful language at the time of writing the findings or writing the research report. Transparency around research process and finding reinforces the integrity and credibility of the work. Ethical reporting practices. Ethical dissemination entails protecting participants' identities, respecting confidentiality, and avoiding harm in how results are presented. Researchers should disclose conflicts of interest, funding source, and other to copyright and intellectual property right. Responsible ownership includes giving credit where due and avoiding plagiarism or misrepresentation of contribution. So, what are the broader implications of ensuring ethical practices in the time of writing research reports? So, the ethical writing and dissemination enhance trust with participant, the scientific community and the public, ensuring that research benefits society while respecting individual dignity. This phase ultimately reflects the researcher's commitment to ethical principles throughout the entire research endeavor. Thus, Ethical considerations in writing and disseminations are integral to upholding research accuracy, fairness, and transparency in scholarly communication. Ethical issues in writing and disseminating research include avoiding scientific misconduct, such as suppressing, falsifying, or inventing findings, which are serious breaches of professional standard. Proposals should clearly state a commitment not to engage in these fraudulent practices, to uphold the integrity of the research process. So, there are a lot of scientific misconduct, and it is important that when we are doing a research analysis, writing research report, we kind of prevent such scientific misconduct. And this misconduct includes fabrication, falsification, and plagiarism, all of which damages scientific credibility and can have wide range negative effects on the research community and society at large. Educational efforts, training in scientific writing ethics, and the use of plagiarism detection software are important strategies to prevent unethical practices, especially for early career researchers. Ethical writings require recognizing all contributors who have made substantial intellectual or practical contribution, avoiding gift authorship to those who do not qualify, and preventing ghost authorship where key contributors are omitted. Ghost authorship would be, say, a very common example could be where the, say, the research PhD scholar has written the article or the research report, but it is published in the name of the supervisor. So, the scholar becomes a ghost. So, these are kind of misconduct. Clear agreement among research team members about authorship and credit help mitigate conflicts and ensure fairness. So, we need to acknowledge not only the team members, but everyone who has kind of provided some support in some way or the other towards the data collection, data analysis, and final publication of the report. Responsible use and interpretation of findings. Researcher must avoid selectively using or misrepresenting data to benefit particular group or agenda, guarding against misuse of the finding. Providing preliminary draft to stakeholder at research site can foster transparency, respect, and inclusion in the dissemination process. In sum, ethical writings and dissemination demand honesty, accurate representation of data, fair recognition of contributions, and proactive measure to prevent misconduct. These practices sustain trust, advance knowledge responsibly, and uphold the dignity of all involved in research. So, actually in very brief, it fulfills the aim and the objective for which the research was being done. Now, the ethical consideration in authorship and collaboration. So, the research has been done, data analysis done, the report has been written. Now, the next stage is in terms of the publication where the research has to be authored. Now, again we need to kind of maintain certain standards to ensure transparency in authorship and collaboration. Transparent reporting of research design, procedures and finding is crucial for readers to access the credibility and reader of study. Researcher must provide detailed description of how studies were planned and executed to enable verification, replication and inform critique by others. So, when most of the time when we pick up research reports or even the publications, we see a chapter dedicated to the entire process of data collection and every minute details are mentioned there. So, that is important because it can also be subject to verification and it also in itself is an evidence of the authenticity of the research process. So, importance of transparency in research report is important. Clear disclosure of study design elements, data collection method and analysis procedures support scientific accountability and reproducibility. Researcher must refrain from publishing identical data sets, discussions and conclusion across multiple paper without adding significant insight or material. Many journals now requires authors to declare if closely related manuscripts are under consideration elsewhere to prevent redundant publication and associated ethical concern. Detailed and honest reporting aligns with the updated guideline like consort for clinical trait and spirit, that is study protocol encouraging completeness and clarity. So, what are the best practices for ethical dissemination? So, the transparent communication through publications protects the researcher's integrity and contributes to advancing knowledge ethically and responsibly. Overall, integrity in releasing research details along with careful avoidance of redundant publication solidifies the ethical foundation of scholarly communication. This ensures that research contributions are credible, trustworthy and meaningful to the academic community and society at large. Here now we will kind of talk about Maxwell's 9 key elements for proposal. Maxwell in 2005 identified 9 essential elements to include in a research proposal which serves as a foundation for building thorough, qualitative, quantitative or mixed method proposal. These elements ensure that the proposal thoughtfully addresses the core aspect of the study and its ethical consideration. So, now let us look into the 9 key elements. Number 1 is the research problem. So, at the outset, the most important part is that the researcher is able to identify and define a significant issue or problem to be studied. What is that problem that needs to be investigated? Number 2 is the research questions. Now, a problem, say if kind of trying to understand gender inequality in society, but gender inequality can exist in various form, in various space. Now, what are the exact questions that the researcher is concerned about, and that will kind of narrow down the problem to the exact focus of the study. Third is kind of knowledge to be produced. Now, why is the research needed? So, obviously to kind of contribute to the existing body of knowledge, and here it is important to identify the specific nature of knowledge or understanding that the researcher is keen in figuring out. Fourth, conceptual framework. Now, concepts, variables are very important, because many a time in social science, some of the concepts can have multiple meaning. Now, in a particular context, in a particular time or space, the concepts kind of be very subjective. So, an important key element of a good proposal is that the researcher outlines the concepts, theories or ideas underpinning the research. Fifth and very important part of the proposal is the methods. Method in terms of describing the data collection, the techniques to be used for data collection, identify whether it is a quantitative, qualitative or a mixed method research, and also elaborate on the data analysis procedures. Number 6 is validity. Now, how to kind of understand the significance of the research is to address the study's validity and trustworthiness. It is important to kind of know how valid the data collected is, and that will improve the significance of the study. Seventh is literature review. Now, the social science areas, we see some of the most of the problems have already been studied and a lot of literature existing. So, prior to the research being done, n number of works, scholarly works are existing. Now, it's important to understand what kind of research has always been done, what are the gaps in the research, and how those gaps can be reduced, or what kind of new contribution the research can do. And for this, it's important to have a literature review. So, frame the study within the existing work and identify the research gaps. Number 8 is the significance, and this significance would kind of be very connected to the time, social, economic, political context in which the research was being done. So, some research could be done say 3 decades back. So, the significance would be different in that context. Now, we need to redefine that significance because it's being done in a new context altogether. And number 9, which we have been discussing all this while, is the ethical consideration. Researchers need to anticipate and describe how ethics will be managed across all phases of research, right from the identification of a research problem to the writing of proposal, to kind of doing data collection, data analysis, writing the report, publications, authorship. Every stage or every phase of the research, ethical considerations are important. So, when we look at Maxwell's 9 key elements for proposal, we see that the writing practices equips researchers to craft well structured and ethically sound proposals that effectively communicate the intended research and ethical commitment. This approach balances conceptual rigor with practical clarity, supporting successful proposal development for diverse research methodologies. And now we look into the 9 key element in terms of the argument, focus area and description. So, the first was in terms of the puzzles or questions, that is the research questions. And the focus area of questions should be the goals and purpose. What are the goals of the research? What are the main questions that the researcher will answer? What do you want to actually understand by doing this particular research? The number 2 is conceptual context. Now, the focus area of concepts, when we are talking about concept, is the literature, the theory. So existing theory that, or what we call when we write proposal, is the theoretical insight. A number of hardcore theories, grand narratives are existing, generalized theories are existing. So, the description is in terms of what is the current state of knowledge or the relevant theory. How does your study relate to and build upon the existing research? These are the relevant questions which the researcher needs to ponder upon when thinking about conceptual context. Third, the design or the methods, and here the focus is on the methodology. And how do we describe it? The main questions that we can raise here is, what will you actually do in the study? How will you collect and analyze your data to answer your question? So, the whole idea, even the selection of the method, would depend on the problem that, or the objective of the research, and therefore, there has to be a clear idea about how the data collection is going to be done. The fourth is the study relation to the question, and here the focus is consistency or fit. Why is the chosen methodology the best way to answer your specific research question? How does the research question demonstrate a logical connection between the problem, the research questions, the concepts, theory and the findings of the research? Fifth is the validity and credibility. Here the focus is on trustworthiness, and the description is that how will you ensure that your conclusions are plausible, credible, well supported by your data? what potential threats to validity are you addressing? So, many a time when we talk about validity and credibility, the researcher also notes down the limitations. There are kind of lot of limitations when we are doing the research, and that will explain the validity. 6 is generalization, where the focus is scope and applicability. To what extent is a result be generalized or transferred to other context, people or settings. 7 is utility contribution, that is actually talking about the significance of the research. Why should anyone care about this study? What are the potential practical and the theoretical contributions? The 8 is feasibility of resource, that is the focus is practicality of the research. Can you actually do this study? Do you have the necessary time, resource, access for doing the research? And the ninth key element is ethical issue, which talks about responsible. What potential ethical issues might rise? How will you address them to protect your participations? And when we follow these 9 key elements to write a proposal, we'll be able to write a good proposal and do valid research. So, the reference for this reading is Creswell J.W. 2009 published research design, qualitative, quantitative and mixed method approaches. Here we are specifically referring to page 87 to 93, which is talking about the ethical guideline. This reading is prescribed in the syllabus on sociological research method, a syllabus for sociology honors for the 5th semester. With this, I come to an end of this lecture. Thank you.